So before I get started, I just wanted to thank the administrative team for their support, patience, and knowledge since I stepped foot in Pleasantville back in November. They have spent hours explaining to me the strategic planning process and the status of where we are at. So thank you to each and every one of you. At our strategic plan update, this is year 2 of implementation of a 5-year plan, and I should begin by saying good evening and thank you for having us. We're delighted to provide the strategic plan update tonight. This is year 2, as I said, of year 5 of the plan. As a reminder, the plan was developed in the 18-19 and 19-20 school years. First by coming up with 6 strategies, and then by having action planning teams come up with suggested or recommended courses of action in order to achieve the more broadly stated strategies. I think the important piece of this slide is to take a look at those 2 bars to the left and to the right, and they're named as parameters. I say that because when this process took place, folks were taught or asked to think without any parameters. So, that was done very intentionally to not have any limitations of funding or time or energy of resources, but to really think boldly and broadly for what it is that we wanted to do to achieve our mission and how we might do that through the recommended action plans. So the strategic plan is rooted in our mission, and the mission indicates the 3 qualities that we would hope to have in our students, and it's stated right in there as lifelong learners, dynamic thinkers, and compassionate contributing citizens. So that is what we hope for our students. And the next part of our mission describes how we might attain that by describing our learning community as those 4 bullets of 1, providing academic programs that provide for understanding, creativity, and critical reasoning to flourish, a safe and supportive environment, an environment where students can explore their individual passions and celebrate those accomplishments, as well as providing opportunities for leadership and service. Our strategic plan articulates 6 strategies. These are bold resolutions to which we want to dedicate time, energy, and resources in order to achieve our mission. We've talked about these every time we've done a budget presentation, but I will state them again. Our broad categories are in leadership, curriculum, wellness, communication, infrastructure and resources, and partnerships. The next part of this presentation is to have an overview of what was accomplished in each one of those strategies. So different administrators are going to come up and provide an annual overview. So these are things that have happened over the course of this school year as they relate to that specific strategy. So the first administrator I'm going to ask to come up is Dr. Chigares to talk to us about leadership.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So I am always very excited to come up and speak to the work that we all contributed to this year in regards to leadership. This year was the first year that we participated and convened a district DEIA committee. When we started off this year, we had close to 120 participants who expressed interest in participating in this committee. And that's a great sign, and just sort of a really good value to how much we really believe in the work that we wanted to go forth and set out this year. As we met throughout this year, we had anywhere from 20 to 40 members who participated in various evening activities that we were very, very pleased. Some of those evening activities that everyone participated in was in different common learning experiences, such as implicit bias training and conversations around equity and equality. After every common learning experience, we had elicited information and perspectives from all of our members who were able to participate in. And every time we sat through as a leadership committee and really looked at what was shared to us so we can reflect, respond, and refocus our group and refocus our work in how we moved forward within this realm. As we moved along throughout the year, we wanted to look at our strategic plan. Our strategic plan we are extremely proud of, and we were very forward-thinking, especially in the DEIA realm. However, when we originally wrote that plan, our world is a very different place now from where it was a few years back. So we felt very strongly about wanting our committee, after sharing in these common learning experiences, to dive deeper and look through our plan through a DEIA lens to provide more specific feedback and advisement that our administrative team can dive into for this upcoming year. We were really happy with the outcomes. I would like to give a special thanks to Jill Grossman, who was our board liaison, as well as all of the members of our DEIA committee. They committed their time, they shared their perspectives, and they did the work behind the work, as Paul Forbes would like to say, which is really not an easy task. So we're very grateful for all that contributed. In addition to some firsts this year, our administrative team participated in 2 diversity job fairs. One diversity job fair was the Lower Hudson Council for School Personnel and Administrators. Our principals participated in that virtually, where they interviewed several candidates throughout the course of a weekend and got a lot of really great resumes, some of whom have progressed along through the hiring process for different vacancies that we've had this year. In addition to that one diversity job fair, we also participate in the Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES Action Collaborative Job Fair. That job fair is a little bit different from a live Zoom interview, where this one, they post a lot of various applicants or positions, and now we have a database of positions that we know we may have an opening for and ones that we do not currently have, but ones that all of the local school districts that participate in may have an opening in. So in 2 years down the road, say we have an opening in one position, we have already a database of applications that we can look through and add them to our other postings to collect and try to hire and recruit a diverse and well-qualified pool of applicants. Another area that was a major focus for us was the New York State Culturally Responsive and Sustaining Framework. Specifically this year, we wanted to dive in at the beginning of the year and unpack it, have our teachers learn and understand it. Some of them, this was the first time they were looking at it, others were well versed. So we knew that we had people coming in at different points, and we wanted to help them feel comfortable with what that framework was. The first pillar of this framework is the welcoming and affirming environment, and that was the area that I want to give a big kudos to our curriculum coordinators, Marianne Flatley and Allison Fox, who's an administrative intern, who all participated and helped design and develop and implement our professional development this year. So special thanks to them. And our professional development had a big foundation in adult learning theory, where a lot of our staff were given several different choice boards that they could pick between connecting with students, connecting with families, looking and analyzing their current environment of their classroom, and really diving in and not just understanding the theory behind culturally responsive framework and what that framework says, but more of applying it to how do we create a very welcoming and affirming environment for our students here in our schools. The last gentleman that we have up there is a gentleman that I named earlier, Paul Forbes. Paul Forbes was a consultant of this district, and I had a chance to meet him at one of our Action Collaborative presentations that we participated in. And going through his training of implicit bias, I've sat through those trainings before through various organizations, and his was very different. His broke down barriers and did it in a very non-controversial way, where, in my opinion, allowed everyone to come to the table and willingly and eagerly participate in that conversation, because that could be a very difficult conversation. We brought Paul not only to our faculty, and he trained them in implicit bias, but we also opened it up to every single member of our entire district this year, which was a really, really great feat. So thank you to all of our school administrators who played a big role in organizing and orchestrating that training, as well as our district DEI committee. And the feedback that we received from Paul Forbes coming here was phenomenal. He was a DEI director in New York City, the head of it, before he branched out into his private sector. So we were very pleased with a lot of these accomplishments that we made this year in the leadership realm. And now I'll pass this along to Dr. Mara to talk about curriculum.
Hello again, everyone. So, in the spring of 2021, Mary and the district joined the Tri-States Consortium. And Dr. Desa and I were trained by the Tri-States Consortium over a 2-day training in December, actually at the Whitby Castle in Rye. And as luck would have it, we did a visitation in Rye in April, 2.5-day visitation. That visit's focus was on professional learning and some of the structures that Rye had in place. And that particular visitation followed a consultancy protocol with colleagues from other districts. We provided Rye with some insight and recommendations based on evidence that we found speaking with stakeholders in their community. So that was a part of a district goal that we had this year, and we accomplished that goal. BRS this year, like the middle school, have grade level curriculum teams that meet once in a 6-day cycle with a curriculum coordinator and the administrative team. Common planning time, sharing resources, unit planning, alignment, professional learning. Those are the anchor agenda items during those meetings. BRS also had an instructional focus this year on guided reading, and resources and staff development days were dedicated to guided reading this year, as Ms. Hunger mentioned at the beginning of the school year. At the middle school, we instituted co-curriculum coordinators this year. So we have Melissa Brown as our 5th and 6th grade curriculum coordinator who works side by side with Tracy L. Sullivan in 7th and 8th grade. Melissa Brown has a K6 cert, so having Tracy as with a 712 cert has paid dividends in terms of some things that we can do with both of them with our team. We also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the school year, one of our goals this year was to create a civics course for 8th graders, which has gone very, very well. Students learn how to identify and address problems both within their community and globally. They also learn how to demonstrate respect for the rights of others, respectfully disagree, and listen to others' viewpoints and provide some evidence for counter arguments. One aspect of civics is advocacy, which I know the board feels strongly about as well. And you may have even received a letter from a student this year, which I have, and I know Dr. Desa has as well. Really passionate students talking about things that they feel strongly about and they would like to know more about and potentially change. We also had a Holocaust Remembrance Day very recently, where students attended a variety of workshops in lieu of their regularly scheduled classes in 8th grade. So these workshops included viewing the documentary Nobody Wants Us, The Number on Great-Grandfather's Arm. They analyzed primary sources and historical images from the time period. They had a discussion of symbolization on the path to genocide, a poetry study, a virtual tour of the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles, and the highlight was a talk given by Ms. Hannah Holsten, which Dr. Shigaris and I listened to live, which was fabulous. A Holocaust survivor brought to us via our longstanding partnership with the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center. Really, really moving and impactful for our students. At the high school, they have 2 new courses that they introduced, the African American Studies and Women and Gender Studies, an advanced placement seminar. They also, Mr. Palumbo mentioned this at the beginning of the school year, Mr. Lamar was able to apply for a grant and receive that grant for Project Lead the Way. 2 new courses will be the result of that grant in the fall for computer science, which will create a more robust pathway for students. So some really exciting things that happened just this year on the curriculum front. I will now pass it to Mr. Pincava, Wellness. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. Nothing gives me more pleasure than sharing our highlights regarding wellness, as it was one of the first topics that I had the opportunity to discuss with you back in the fall. Before my time, social, emotional, and physical wellness have been a priority within Pleasantville, and I knew that when I joined the community. That said, within the last 2.5 years, and especially in this past year, having that strong foundation, developing it, defining it, and strengthening that has really had tremendous impact on our students and our community. The first area that I'm going to highlight is our personnel. During the summer of 2021, our district hired a K-12 counselor. That K-12 counselor is Marianne Flatley. She's been wonderful. In her role, she has supported all of our schools, both with our staff and our students, either with professional development, pushing in for SEL lessons, providing small group support, such as working with new students to our community, providing resources for families, and she's also been defining and affirming our SEL program within the district to make sure that we have a strong foundation moving forward. In addition, through our partnership with Pleasantville Strong, a BRS SEL specialist was hired, again, at the beginning of the year. Laura Moore has supported in that role. Laura has provided incredible professional development. She's in our classrooms often providing SEL lessons. And in addition, she's made herself available to families, to teachers. She's a very opening person and just like, you need this, I'm ready for it. And she's been an incredible part of the community. And Laura, Marion, and I all came in together and we bonded very quickly, recognizing the needs that our youngest learners within the community had. And our conversations led to not only looking forward in what we could do, but looking back on what's been in place. And Friends Way, which is our school psychologists at BRS, are an exceptional resource, and they always have been. And so starting this year, we very quickly collaborated with them in forming an SEL team. That SEL team was used to design, implement SEL lessons, and to create themes basically from January through June, focused on gratitude, being confident, kindness, all these aspects of our development that when we name them, the students really step up and understand it. So their work was really valuable. Beyond that, we would check in monthly or more often, depending on the social challenges that presented this year. And that might have been for a grade level, such as the 4th grade, who needed conversations around the impact of powerful words, or our kindergarten and 1st grade, who needed specific lessons in personal space. So, through this active kind of response to what our needs were within the building, we were able to be impactful within our BRS community. And, at this point in the year, we're sharing a survey with our teachers to reflect on what has had impact, and Laura and Marianne will be meeting during the summer to reflect and develop what we will hopefully have a start, in September rather than January this year, hit the ground running. Over in the middle and high school, the continuity within our SEL program has just expanded. In terms of the DPT Steps A program, it was expanded to 7th and 8th graders. Marianne Flatley has supported in lessons with those students, and I should point out that I learned that Local Clinician and Pleasantville Parent has been supporting our 5th and 6th graders with those DBT Steps A lessons. And then in the high school, within the physical education programs, wellness was pushed right in. So from K to 12, we have students engaging in wellness, face-to-face activities with adults to support them, and everyone has a contact, which is an incredible accomplishment in my opinion. In addition to that, not lost on these face-to-face interactions have been wellness for those who need as it is available. So within the middle and the high school, activities for students, staff, families, on meditation, self-care, all these aspects that sometimes within 2020 we're like, I don't know if I have time for this or I need to do this. They persevered and continued to provide those opportunities this school year. And lastly, I just wanted to add, these are all physical, in-person resources that have been provided in the district, but we spent a lot of time on computers. We spent a lot of time using technology. So the last area I wanted to share was about the supports in terms of SEL and wellness in our digital and technological platforms within BRS, in our K through 4, in all of our grades, K to 4, Mr. Miss Iannotti, excuse me, I have Dr. Desat and Tina in my head, you heard me. So Miss Iannotti, our computer teaching assistant, led lessons for K through 4. In the middle school, they used Common Sense Media and provided those lessons within the STEAM classes. And in our high school, within the health, social studies, and physical education programs, there were units designed around digital citizenship. And lastly, some of you are also alongside me in our technology committee within the district. And within that committee, we've been reflecting on wellness as it relates to digital media. Our most recent meeting was discussing an article about students, whether or not they're being lost within technology individually or bonded socially in those platforms, which is important for us as a district to be attuned to. And the last part in that committee is also involved our curriculum coordinator, Kim Schulman, who's been working with Dr. Faggio in terms of alignment from K to 12 in those digital citizen lessons, as well as the technology that students need to be apt in order to progress throughout their time here in K-12 and in their future. So those are all the highlights in terms of wellness. And next up, we have Dr. Desat and Mr. Palumbo.
Hello and good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight. You can never communicate enough. So talking about our plan for communication and the tools that we use to connect with students, families, teachers, members of the community will always be a big priority. I'll also say that certainly in the last 2 school years, our efforts have intensified. There were periods of time when children were learning at home, and then there were periods of time when they were learning in a hybrid model. Now we've got them all back in the building, which is wonderful. But we want to maintain that close connection and that clear communication that we've put into place. You'll notice our first bullet point talks a little bit about our online learning platforms. Those are also used for communication in addition to the work that they're done instructionally in the classroom. Seesaw is a tool that you'll see in grades K through 4. You'll see Schoology in 5 through 12. And in those platforms, you've got a tremendous opportunity to share materials, connect with families, provide information. I was fielding some text messages yesterday from a parent who was on Schoology and had questions about what was going on with their child's work, and it was great to be able to connect them today with the teacher and the counselor to have them work on a plan for the 4th quarter, because it's coming to an end, believe it or not. I think today's the first day of June, which is a little bit crazy. So those are great tools for communication. We've also used forms, both Microsoft and Google, to solicit feedback from families, students, and teachers. That's really assisted in our professional development this year with the faculty, because we've been able to tailor the time that we have with teachers around some specific instructional goals that we have and some needs that they have identified. We've also used that tool with families. I recently put a poll out to members of the class of 2022 and their families at home to get some feedback on our commencement ceremonies. So those are great tools for communication and feedback. We've also used K-12 Alert, School Messenger, and recently in the middle school and the elementary school, SMORE. Specifically, that SMORE tool brings a lot of the weekly newsletters to life for families. I'm going to be looking at some of those things at the high school next year. Don and Rachel, great job with that this year. It's a big hit, so certainly something we're very excited to use here in the building. Social media continues to be something that is embraced by members, of the administrative team here to communicate with families. I know at the secondary level, Twitter is used. At the elementary level, they began an Instagram account this year, again, to bring some of what's going on in school to life for families in the community and to make sure that connection is taking place. And then we added a last thing in there, this community access piece. Zoom has become a tremendous tool that we use. We've had some awards ceremonies recently at the high school, concerts, and in addition to the in-person feed, we've also been able to create Zoom feeds in a live way for families. So if they cannot attend, maybe if they're not feeling well, if they've got relatives outside of the area, it's really easy to plug in and play. Tim Carlo has been a tremendous asset helping me with that. I want to thank Tim. And certainly it's connected teachers, students, and families. And also we've continued to use Zoom this year for our evening programs for families and to connect students who can't be in the classroom. So a big round of applause to our teachers, who are continuing to use Zoom to connect students who can't be into the classroom. I'm so happy that we're able to connect families at home when they can't attend evening programs through Zoom. And we've also archived a lot of those programs as well. So, in our weekly newsletters, you'll see an unarchived version. Zoom's got a great feature where it records a webinar for you. You can put that link right out. I know that Cameron gets a little frustrated sometimes because we use a lot of memory doing that. So we transfer it to YouTube. We can keep those things there. But certainly great tools for communication, and an area where we're always looking to learn and grow. Connecting with people is vital to the work that we do, and we can't do it without healthy partnerships. So I thank all the members of my team and the administrative team that are doing all this great work, and look forward to connecting with new people every day. Now I'm going to ask Steve to come up and talk a little infrastructure and resources.
Good evening, everybody. I'm always happy to be here to talk about what's going on in my facilities department. So we'll start at the top. Over the past year, I've been coordinating with the Pleasantville Police Department to come in over our school breaks and also after hours to do walkthroughs and better familiarize themselves with our buildings. We've also added an after-school safety person at the high school for building safety during after-school activities. We've replaced 13 old copiers with Xerox multifunction devices throughout the district. I've also allocated funds in my 2022-2023 budget for the purchase of 7 bottle filling stations that will hopefully be installed this summer if I can get them. We'll be replacing some of the older water fountains throughout the district. And working with Mr. Palumbo, Mr. Verchese, Mr. Chow, theatrical lighting company, and a Pleasantville High School alum, we developed a budget and a plan to upgrade major portions of our theatrical lighting here in the high school auditorium and the control systems, and we're going to upgrade it to an LED system, and we're hoping that this work can be performed this summer. And then finally, something that I'm really excited about, this is really good, important work that will positively affect our students and staff and community for years to come, and that's our HVAC project at the middle school. The surveying of the equipment, planning, budgeting, and design work has been going on throughout the school year. I want to thank Angela Vella, Mike Bush, and John Chow for being part of the facilities committee during all this planning. Really been a lot of work put into it. At this point, we're at the late stages of the design work. The next step will be to complete the design work, submit it to SCD, then we'll go out to public bid, and we're hoping that the work can be performed in the summer of 2023. I should say it's scheduled to be performed in the summer of 2023. And that's all I have for infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me here this evening. I think it's very fitting that partnerships is what ends the presentation tonight. So as I've been listening to some of my colleagues speak, I've been jotting down that the word partnerships came up as we were speaking in curriculum, leadership, wellness, communication, and infrastructure. And it's really one of the things that makes Pleasantville such a unique and special community is the strong partnerships that we have, not only within our schools, within our community, as well as beyond that. When we set out on this journey, one of our goals within partnerships was visitations. And you heard a little bit of Dr. Mara speak about the Tri-State Consortium and the visitation that he and Dr. Tassau was able to go on earlier in the year. At BRS, we pivoted a little bit to be, I guess, with the COVID times of what's going on. So one of the intentions was to have teachers visiting each other. We learn from each other. There's a wealth of knowledge within our district. And so we pivoted a bit and we designed fishbowl lessons together. And what that looks like is we did planning together. And then we implemented the lesson, and some of us played the students, some of us played the teacher, some of us played the observer. And we use it as a unique opportunity to learn from each other. It's something we're looking forward to getting back into the classrooms as we continue to move forward. But it was something that we were able to accomplish this year. across our schools, our high school students have been instrumental in connecting with the students in the middle school as well as the students at BRS. One of the greatest things about this aspect of partnerships was that this idea actually came from the students. When we were developing the plan, we met with the student councils and student governments across all 3 schools, and one of their desires was to spend more time connecting with each other and doing things together. So our high school students this year, we had Wellness Day at BRS. Our high school students were there. They led some of the physical fitness activities. The high school ensemble plays for our 8th graders and 7th graders to help get them really excited about musical opportunities that are waiting for them in the high school. And as we saw earlier, our Science Olympiad has some high school volunteers, high school helpers that are there helping our middle school team as well. Within that, we also have school transition. So recently, our 4th graders from BRS visited the middle school as part of their transition plan to go. Our 4th graders wrote some questions that they had. And these questions went to the 5th graders. And the 5th graders, as well as Dr. Marin, Dr. Chikaris, helped to lead these tours. And the design of the questions made it more meaningful for the kids from BRS and also gave a lot of ownership to the 5th graders who gave them something to share, something that they were really proud about their school. Similarly, within partnerships across families, this year we piloted at BRS a new family buddy program. We had a lot of new families come into the district over the summer. And for any new family coming in that was interested, we tried to match them up with a family that was already part of the Pleasantville school system to be able to ask those questions that we said, like, no one wants to answer to, like, how early do I have to leave my house to actually get my kid to school on time? I can provide you with this is our arrival window, but what time do I actually have to leave my house? Who better to share that with than a parent? Or where do you go pick up this for your kid for school? So it's something we piloted and we're looking forward to watching it grow throughout the district. The orientation programs for our family, I know recently the incoming 5th grade families were recently in the middle school, and they had a chance to hear all about the program that their students would be, that their children would be engaged in when they go there as well. We have ongoing partnerships in the community. We feel fortunate to continue on with some really strong partnerships. For example, Pleasantville Strong, and you've heard some of that work expanding over this year as well. We have a partnership with PCTV inside Pleasantville Schools. But we've also introduced some new partnerships this year. And one area that we want to highlight, although not new in partnering with some of the universities in the area, such as Pace University or Mercy, it took a little bit of a different angle this summer, this year. And we've had some of our aides who are working within some of our programs who are also getting their observation hours, as well as some of their student teaching experiences, while simultaneously being a part of our district throughout the whole year. And it's worked out really well. And a big thank you to Dr. Vala and Mr. Brink for really helping to deepen that work this year. And a shout out to Mr. Fondi for continuing the senior internship program, which we know over the past couple of years has been a very challenging thing to do. Some of the more traditional routes that we've been able to take in the past, we've had to pivot. And again, it goes back down to just the strengths of the partnership within the community and beyond. And Pleasantville is just such a place that takes so much pride in its schools and in the youth that are here, and we're so fortunate that so many of the families within the community have been able to continue to strengthen some of that work. So thank you so much for having us. And I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Desat.
Thank you. So that was a overview of all of our highlights just from this year in our 6 strategies. And what I'd like to wrap up with is a notion of where our next steps will be in terms of strategic planning. You heard Dr. Chigara's talk about the DEIA committee. They worked through their March, April, May, and June meetings, March, April, May meetings to provide recommendations on next step for our district. So taking a look at our strategic plan in light of DEIA and what could be important for us in terms of moving forward. Our Padlets closed today, so we're looking forward to seeing what they had to say about next steps in light of DEIA. On June 7th, we have a week from tonight, we'll be back here with our original strategic planning team, encompassing the steering committee and the action planning teams. And we'll be meeting to talk about where we are in a little bit more in depth with our strategic planning strategies and where we could potentially be going with our strategic plan in light of changes that have happened in our schools, community, state, country, nation, and what are our best steps in terms of moving forward in our strategic plan. At the end of June, the administrators will be able to brief the board on their building and department priorities, and then we'll spend time in July and August working to finalize goals for the 22-23 school year, and by September, right around the corner, we'll have another presentation with our commitments to the work for the 22-23 school year. So thank you so much for listening on our status with the strategic plan.